Oh, hello.
He's a big fan.
All right, good morning. We are live. Abby and I are so excited. And I was joking as we were talking in our back room before we went live. For those of you who can see us, I'm like, we look like three sisters here, the three Catholic sisters. We are so excited for our guest this morning for so many reasons. And she is a Catholic speaker, author, entrepreneur. Her story is absolutely amazing. And I think it's the perfect time that we scheduled her right before Christmas because we need those feel good stories and transformations and testimonies. And if there's ever a time to be pulled closer to Christ, it's right now. And so we are so excited to have Leah Darrow with us this morning. So welcome.
Thank you for having me. I love it. This is great.
I know you and Abby, have a history and know each other. And I was so excited when someone from our team had, was we're booking interviews. They're like, who would be phenomenal? And so I was diving deep into you, and Abby's like, oh my gosh, she's phenomenal. And I'm like, have I been living under a rock? How do I not know you? And so I've been a sponge learning everything about you, and you're just such a beautiful mother inside and out. And so I'm really excited for everybody else to either be introduced to you this morning or get to know you better. So I'm excited. I'm excited.
I'm ready for it. Let's do it.
So let's start back to where you really became well known, and that is your experience with America's Next Top Model, right? So, let's start there. Kind of take us through that experience. What year was that? What was your life like spiritually, as far as motherhood went? And then what happened during like the course of your time on there and after you left?
Yes. Okay. So there's a lot there.
To unpack.
Okay. So I think it was around 2003 or so. Uh, I mean, Google would verify me, but something like that, where I auditioned for the TV show America's Next Top Model. Prior to that, I had been away from the practice of my faith for about 10 years, around there. And it was a slow decline, but I really felt because of my past sins and what I've done and what I started doing in high school and college and everything, it was a snowball effect. And I just thought that it's not that I didn't believe in God or I didn't believe he existed. I just thought that there wasn't a space for me in church. Like church wasn't for me anymore. Like, okay, I'm happy that it's for you, but I missed the boat and I've screwed up too much and I got to suck it up and deal with it. And just find a different dream, find a different path. And the world completely offered me. They stepped in and swooped me up and said, hey, listen, we got a path for you. And that was really through a lot of just random comments from people who'd be like, oh, you're pretty, you should be a model, as if that's the only thing that I could possibly do. But I was looking for validation and I was insecure. And I wanted somebody to see something good in me. And so I knew that I got attention from how I physically looked. So I thought I could bridge that into a business. And so modeling in the fashion industry seemed to say, yeah, we know how to do that. And you come over here. So it wasn't a huge jump for me to audition for America's Next Top Model. I just thought, okay, great. This could be a great opportunity for me to, I guess, to do something. So it was pretty aimless. And I auditioned for that. And I obviously got on. I was on cycle 3 of America's Next Top Model. And I don't know. I don't watch TV anymore, but I think reality TV is hopefully taking like a downward slide. I don't know how popular it is anymore because back then it was huge. It was blowing up. It was like the biggest thing ever. And America's Next Top Model was like the big reality TV show. And so fortunately or unfortunately, it brought me to a place where there was a lot of quick fame, and there was my picture was everywhere, and along with all the other girls, and it created, along with what you would think you would want, it creates just a terrible demon um, that haunts you. I mean, the comments that we would receive after a photo shoot, being on the show, from chat rooms back then, thank God social media wasn't completely up and going, was just horrific. I mean, people would comment being like, Leah was so ugly in that photo shoot, she should kill herself and give her spot to someone else. I mean, so these are the things that are going on. I say that because I think when we talk about reality TV, we can talk about it as if it's just this thing out there, but it's something that really destroys not just the contestants, but all of us watching it, because it poses human brokenness as entertainment. And then we are entertained by the brokenness of other people. And that is massively evil and wrong. And when you become desensitized to what you see on TV and these people who are living these lives and making decisions, and they're choosing this person to date, or or whatever it might be, whatever show you watch, you're really watching people who are broken, being taken advantage of, being manipulated, and then you are now saying, this is how I entertain myself. And that's not okay. It's not okay. And so that's my soapbox for reality TV. But I was on that show. I got eliminated. I afterwards stayed in New York, and I thought I could still make it. I'm gonna go for it. And I got modeling jobs, and I was making good money. I had a comma in my paycheck, and I thought things were great. However, I thought things were great because how it looked on paper. Like, I live in New York City. I'm a fashion model. I am making money. I'm going on photo shoots. But the reality is that I'm massively depressed, huge anxiety, drinking like crazy to just keep the thoughts away that this isn't a good idea, dating the worst guys, surrounding myself in an environment that is just toxic from top to bottom, but telling myself, this is what I want. That's what I look good. You see me walk down the streets in New York, and I look like I've got someplace to go, and I'm doing something great, but inside I am just a decaying corpse. And so all of that really came crashing down in the middle of a fashion photo shoot that I did for an international magazine. And it was supposed to be like one of those big jumping off points of, for my career. And it was there where God, quite unplanned by me, but God decided to jump in and speak to my heart, speak to my soul. And things began to change dramatically after that photo shoot, where I really heard God's voice on my heart in the middle of the shoot. And he called me to more. I remember I heard in my heart that he said, I made you for more. And it broke my heart, because I thought I believed it. And I realized I was living a really, really crap life by my own hand. I was making these decisions. No one was forcing me. And I'm living this life that little girls just aspire to, and they want to be in. They want to be this, they want to be beautiful and pretty and have all this attention. And here I am at the center of it. And it's just horrific. And I knew that I was made for more. I wasn't made just to take a pretty picture. I mean, holy crap. I mean, is that really what we're going to tell our girls? Mm-hmm. That you're just pretty? And but that's what I was doing with my career. I was absolutely sending that message. And I just I didn't want to do that anymore. So I walked out and I left, and that began my journey back home, to the church, and to sanity, and to logic, and a lot of therapy.
So that photo shoot where you just felt it upon your heart, what God was calling you to do, and so much more than that. So that was it. That was your breaking point. Did you leave New York City then?
Yeah. So I actually, in the middle of that shoot, when that happened, I was right in the middle of some pictures that were being taken, and I just felt in my heart this exact moment of what was happening. And I just looked around and I looked at my life, and it just was I just thought, this is just I don't want to live like this. Who wants to live like this? Like, I knew I was being used. I knew I was a puppet. And I know that I was being used to have other people look at me and then use me. And then I was also, at the same time, it just hit me like, I'm taking these pictures for this magazine for men to look at and lust over. I'm taking these pictures. They're going to be there for little girls to say, that's what beauty is. And I want to be like that. And it just broke me. I just thought, we all have such influence. Every one of us, we all have our own platform that God gives us. And I was using mine terribly. And it really hit me in that moment. So that was absolutely my moment. I walked out of the photo shoot after photographers were yelling and screaming and saying all sorts of crazy, not great things, using a lot of colorful language. And I remember the last thing the photographer said to me, he's like, if you leave, you'll be a nobody. Like, we will make sure of it. You will be a nobody. And I remember just looking back and I just told him, I was like, do you promise? And I wanted so badly for him to keep that promise. I'm like, don't call me. Don't tempt me with another photo shoot. Don't tempt me with tens of thousands of dollars for this. I don't know if I'm strong enough to say no. Like, promise me you'll forget me. I want nothing of your world anymore. I don't want money. I don't want fake promises. It's disgusting. And I just began to, like, in that moment, like, hate everything about that world. And I walked all the way home and I called my dad, who was back in Missouri. And my parents live in Missouri. And I called my dad and I just said, if you don't come and get me, I'm going to lose my soul. And there's a very long pause. And when he finally spoke, he just said, okay, baby, I'm coming to get you. And my daddy drove over 2,000 miles to come and pick me up. And when he finally got there, he knocked on my door and he had his hands like all the way out, stretched all the way out as I opened up the door. They were already out. Like, he was waiting for me to open the door. He was already in that position. And he just lunged at me and he's like, I'm so happy to see you. And I just thought, you're out of your mind. I'm the oldest of 6 kids in my family. I am the worst example to my brothers and sisters. I have been away from the church for 10 years. I have done things that are unspeakable. And you're happy to see me. And I just couldn't get it. I couldn't get it. I'm a parent now, and I get it. Now I completely understand what he was talking about. But back then I just didn't. I was just a little lost girl. And he hugged me and he just was saying all these things that he wanted to do in New York. He was like, let's go to Central Park and let's go get a hot dog and go to Carnegie Deli. And I'm thinking, I am only at the point of spiritual despair. And you want to get a hot dog? Like, what are you doing? But at the same time, I also just didn't care because I was so exhausted. I think that's the thing that we forget. Sin is exhausting.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it is. You have to brainwash yourself. You have to gaslight yourself over and over to keep doing the sin. And I was just so tired of my life. So I was like, that's fine. I don't really care anymore. Like, do whatever you want to do, Dad. I'll go with you to grab whatever hot dog. Let's just get out of here. And before he stopped, he said, okay, but first we're going to go see Jesus. We're going to go to confession. And I was like, ooh, I don't think so. Like, again, that ship has sailed. And he looked at me and he said, you called and you said you wanted to go home. And I'm here to take you home. And Jesus is home. You want to go anywhere else, you can call Southwest Airlines. And I couldn't refute that. I'm like, you're right. You're right. I did want to go home. But home is not necessarily a place. Home is Christ. And if I'm serious about changing my life, I have to go home. So I began there, and that began my journey really back to my faith. I reconciled myself with Christ Jesus. I gave him everything that I'd ever done. Um, I asked for mercy and begged for it, and he gave it. And I walked out with peace and with a clarity in my heart that I knew that even though I didn't know what was next, I knew that I was walking in the right direction. And that really brought me to a place where I could start beginning to put the pieces back together. And that began, like I said, like with a lot of therapy and a lot of more. And I began to actually pray again and practice my faith, and just slowly enter back into the world with it, as a new person.
That is so powerful. I mean, I just had tears streaming. And, I think something you had said earlier on that, part of that sin and exhaustion of what kept you away was, the enemy tries to make us feel this guilt and we're too far away and you're too long gone and you're too sinful and there's no point of return and you're too, dirty and have made these mistakes and and that's what keeps so many people away. And then also, I even know personally when I've lived a life of sin and I've already, I've gone back to Christ and I've living a life of repentance and been to confession multiple times. And I've even had priests tell me, I would confess the same sin over and over. And that was part of the enemy keeping me in my guilt. I'm already living in repentance and I've already confessed it and I've already begged for mercy, but I wasn't accepting God's mercy. I was thinking that my sin is too big and I'm too guilty and how can God forgive me? And that's where the enemy has had his claws in me for years and other people around me telling me, you're not forgiven and you're not this. And so those chains can, hold us in different parts of our sin, even when we're past it and we feel guilty. But that you are in your story, it's this beautiful example of mercy and coming back. And it doesn't matter if it's a couple months or a couple years or a decade or longer. And your father is just so Christ-like. As you said, it just reminds me of Jesus, is you open the door and there were his arms waiting for you. And I'm sure that was just such a beautiful gift for your father too. And so, my gosh, that's just such a beautiful testimony.
Yeah, it is. And that's the beauty of it, is that, not everybody has a dad like my dad. I want to acknowledge that. Not everybody has somebody they can call. But that does not mean that they don't have a father. That does not mean that God the Father is not there for them. It does not mean that God the Father's arms are not open and ready, right? Like the parable of the prodigal son. The father was out waiting for his son before the son could even come upon, the horizon for the father to see. Like our Father waits for us. He waits for our homecoming, and he waits for us to come home. And there's just no better time. And we always think, we always think of all the reasons and the excuses. I know I did, of not to bring my life back to Christ. And the devil and evil will give you plenty of them, and shame and a million other things. But there's no price on peace. In fact, I take it back. I guess there is a price on peace, and that's Christ on the cross. That's what it cost. And there's nothing there's nothing in life that can compare to that. Like once you start experiencing the peace that Christ can give you with repentance and mercy, and you realize that you can live a life of freedom, real freedom, oh yeah, forget it. And that's one of the things, that's like the main message that I've been speaking about for the past, 13, 14 years in this work now, is that anybody can be forgiven. And you have to start throwing, you're not that important. Your sin is not that great that Christ cannot forgive you. And Christ is the answer. And we have to submit ourselves in humility to him and to be able to walk firmly in that faith, and be courageous in it, because there's no other answer. I mean, look around the world. Come on now. What else works? What else really is going to give you lasting peace? What is going to take away guilt and shame? Nothing else but Christ.
I do think it is. I mean, there is something to be said though about like amazing dads. You know, I have an amazing dad, and when I actually was part of a book where I told this story, when you know, everybody knows my story. I was very, very lost in a part of the world, and when I called my parents and told them that I was leaving Planned Parenthood, you know, my parents, of course, were like, they were in the car and they were on vacation. And I, you know, was telling them, I had actually told them to pull over because they were driving and I didn't want them to like fly off the road and have an accident. And, but when I, you know, I was like, I told them, I said, look, I'm putting in my resignation like right now. I'm faxing it over because that was when people still fax things. And, you know, my mom is like screaming and crying and whatever. And my dad, the first thing that came out of his mouth was, do you need me to send you money? And, you know, and I was like, no, dad, like I'm okay, you know, but that was the first thing he thought, because not that my parents are like rich or anything, they're not, but that was the first thing he thought of. Like, I have to protect my daughter right now. Like, I have to think about my daughter right now. Like, she's in a time of crisis. Like, she's leaving her job. She makes a lot of money. Like, I'm willing to give her everything I have because she's making this amazing decision right now. Right. So let me just extend to her everything I have. Like, can I send you money? And I just think there's something to be said, like, about really amazing fathers and how important fathers are, particularly in the life of daughters. And I think that, you know, I mean, I think this all the time, like, and I just said this, actually, I just gave a talk at Turning Point, and I'm, you know, looking at all of these young people and particularly women in the audience, and I'm like, look, I'm like, ladies, choose wisely. Like, when you are making a decision on, you know, who you want to partner with for the rest of your life, like, choose wisely, because this is who is going to be the partner that you're going to raise children with. And it's a big deal. Like, who's going to be the dad to your children or the dad to your daughters? Like, who's going to be that person that extends their hand to them when they've messed up, right? And I just think it is an important lesson. And I think that um, even men who are listening now, like, this is an important thing to know. Like, if you have young children, if you have young daughters, like, pay attention to how good dads are being dads. Because we have so many hurting young women in the world today who really, really need good fathers. And that's what I see so often when I'm out on the sidewalk. And I tell people all the time, I'll be out on the sidewalk in front of an abortion clinic, and I'll be standing there with some man who's sidewalk counseling with me. 19 times out of 20, I can be reaching out to her, and this sidewalk counselor who's a man can be reaching out to her, and 19 times out of 20, she'll go to the man and not me, because these women are so desperate for good men in their lives because they've just had so many crappy men in their lives. And so women need to choose well.
They do. And you know, our fathers are meant to be icons of God the Father. And so we should see in our husbands, we should see in our dads, this kind of like this beautiful icon where it's going to like show forth the face of Christ, and it's going to show the hands of Christ. It's going to show exactly who Christ is, and that he comes from God the Father. Like God the Father should be shining through into those behaviors. And I think that's absolutely true. I mean, we have to be able to speak forthrightly about how much we need good men, and for men to be good men, for men to rise up and to step out the comfort zone and speak up and speak to women who are hurting. If my dad didn't speak up when I was hurting, if he didn't get in the car and show his face and do the hard work, he could have just said all those things on the phone.
Mm-hmm.
My dad could have sent me a ticket home.
Right.
But he didn't. He went the extra mile because he knows how important it is to show up at the face, show up in person and face me and be able to say. And you know what is so interesting is that when I made the phone call to my parents, and I'll be honest with you, I was hoping my mom would answer. I did. It's hard to face dad. Mm-hmm. It's hard to face dad when you're like, okay, I'm acknowledging that I'm the hottest of hot messes. This is a dumpster fire, and I need help. But dad answered, and after I got off the phone, my mom rushed up, because back then it just showed a caller ID of a number from New York and like nothing else back then. So my mom was very, very scared, because they had received some other calls from New York that had been just not good involving me, and so they were always scared when they saw a New York number. My mom ran up and she's like, Patrick, was that Leah? And my dad was just sitting on the end of the bed, and he was just crying. And my mom just said, Patrick, what's wrong? And all he said is, we got her back. And then from that point, my dad had grabbed a duffel bag from underneath the bed, and he was just stuffing like socks and underwear in it. Like my mom was like screaming at him to like pack pants and everything.
He's going nude. He's going.
The only thing he cared about was clean feet. So, it's a guy thing. I don't know, but I mean, it seems like it's an essential piece. But my mom's yelling at him to pack pants. But they made a deal. The whole point is they made a deal. My dad and my mom made a deal before he got in the car and drove from Missouri to New York City. And she said, you go and you get our daughter, and then you take her to Christ. And if she decides to not go to Christ, then you come home alone. And that was a deal that my parents made. I didn't even know this till years later about my homecoming. I mean, and that is the beauty of marriage. It's the beauty of strong wives and strong husbands, and dads showing up for their kids when we need them. There's a reason why men are protectors and defenders and rescuers. Yeah. And it's nothing bad. We should thank the patriarchy instead of other words. And I absolutely will. And I say that time and time again. Every time you flip a light switch on, thank you, patriarchy. Every time you drive on some cement, thank you, patriarchy. Next time you see construction and buildings going up, thank you, patriarchy. Like, and of course, every time you see a dad pick up his little girl, small or big, thank you. Like, thank you for being good men, because we need them in this world.
Yeah, absolutely. And you, I mean, not only did your life change, of course, modeling and all this, but now you have a slew of kids. I mean, you did the Catholic thing. So tell us about that too. I mean, your life changed, you got married. I mean, so tell us about that.
Yeah. So I married Ricky, and Ricky and I got married in 2012. And fun story, but yeah, so we're married, and we just, started having babies. And I was already starting to share my story and kind of be a public speaker at that point already, a couple of years in. And I would, have my first child, Agnes. And so she just went along with me, to all my talks, and we carried around. And that was very, at least to me, it came off as very taboo. Like, you're bringing your baby with you. It was very shocking, I think, to some people in maybe the Catholic or Christian world, that, that they could coexist, evangelization and working with babies. I was home the majority of the time, keep this in mind, but still. And then it was then another baby, and then another baby, and then 6 babies later, here we are. I had my 6th baby, I think like 9 months ago. And I've just been having him, been pregnant for a while. And we're homeschooling because the world, I don't know. And just embracing everything that motherhood has. And motherhood's been such a good teacher in holiness, in breaking me down and teaching me exactly what true beauty is, and what my real goal is, like what vocation really means as a mother. I just continue to learn more and more of just really how selfish I am, and how I have to keep working to help my kids and form them into who God wants them to be and who they're called to be in this world to do something good. And so, yeah, I mean, we moved to a farm. We left the city. We've been living in, like suburbs, city life for a while, and decided that a couple years ago, Ricky and I really just began to think about, like, how do we want to raise our kids? Obviously, okay with the faith. Obviously, with some of these other things in place. Sure. Homeschool, okay. But then it began to go deeper, and we began to ask ourselves questions of, like, where can we cultivate sainthood the most? And for us, God led us to a place where we needed to just create less distraction, and we needed to be a little bit more inconvenient. And that brought us to a farm in southern Missouri. And so we live on 80 acres, and we have a working farm, and we butcher our chickens, and we don't know what we're doing. We YouTube at night together, like, how do you kill a chicken? And then we like figure it out. And then we butcher the chicken. I had a YouTube as we butchered this. I chronicled it all on Instagram. I think it's saved under Farm Life if you want to see it. There's a lot of interesting comments. Some people did not want to see it. But I'm like, you don't have to follow me. Like, you do.
I mean, yeah, it's their choice, right?
You don't have to click the circle. But,
yeah, exactly.
I had my phone up, and I was like watching YouTube videos as I was butchering the chicken. I'm like, am I doing this right? Anyways, so we're learning on the go. We're figuring it out. I'm figuring it out. I'm figuring out farming and motherhood all at the same time on the farm. And yeah, this is it. We're just doing it, man.
I love that. And you really hit the nail on the head when you were talking about finding that place to cultivate sainthood and where there's less distraction, because distraction truly is one of the weapons that Satan uses, right? And I know sometimes I'm like that, just, doing so much with social media, and my mind's always like, it's like a tennis game constantly, like back and forth. And I have this love-hate relationship with it. And now, so I have 5 kiddos, 4 of them, well, the baby doesn't count. He's not homeschooling yet, but 4 of my oldest are now homeschooling. And every day, I go to daily mass, and I need it, because it's like, can I do this? Because it is like, motherhood does. It's such selflessness and such service 24 hours a day, literally, where I'm like, it's either I feel like I'm killing it as a mom, or I'm like, I wasn't made for this. I wasn't made for this. It's so difficult. But it's in those moments of, and I talk to Abby a lot about this, when you're hitting those rock bottoms and those frustration points and those moments of, God, I can't anymore. It's in the fire that we're refined, right? It's in the brokenness where it's like, where God gets us to fully surrender, where it's, okay, I can't do this my way anymore. This isn't my timeline. I'm being stubborn. I'm trying to do it Reagan's way, and that's not working. So it's when we fully surrender and completely trust in him, whether it's with a massive move, going to completely something unfamiliar. Because for me, no matter if the familiar is good or bad, it's familiar. So we like to stay there because we know. And so it's when we step into sometimes walking through the darkness of the unfamiliar to get to the light, right? And so I think you've done a beautiful job at, displaying and being living proof of that trust to get to the other side and taking those big steps, whether it was leaving New York City, whether it was moving to the farm, whether it's deciding to homeschool all these little people. And it's in those moments of insane courage where God's like, okay, I'm going to come meet you halfway now because you've trusted me enough to come 50% of the way. That's scary. And now I'm going to come meet you, because he loves us that much that we have that free will, and he's going to allow us to do whatever we selfishly want to do.
Yeah, and that courage exists only when fear is present or the unknown is present. So I mean, I think courage is ideal, but in practice it means you have to be in a place where you're really uncomfortable to practice courage. Like you're not courageous when it's easy. So, and I think there's also something to be said about mindset within all of this. Like I've had to, and I still do, continually keep myself from the brainwashing that our culture has done with women in terms of motherhood, of basically, I can't, and I know it's like the popular thing to be like, oh, I can't, or I'm dead, and all these expressions. And while I find sometimes them funny, I just don't allow that in my head, man. I don't, because with Christ I can. And if I continue to tell myself that motherhood is hard and this is so hard and I'm so tired. And yes, I'm not saying it's not hard. I'm not saying it's not tired. But if I coach myself in saying that over and over, all my brain's going to hear is, you are tired and you can't do this. You are tired and you can't do this. This is not for you. You can't have another baby. How could you love another person and love all these? Like, all of these are lies from the devil. Make no mistake about it. And it's absolutely ridiculous. So when it comes to whatever Christ is calling you particular to do, it's important that you remember that there's another voice that's trying to speak to you to tell you that you can't, to tell you that it's too hard and it's wrong, or people won't like you, or you're going to lose your job, or whatever it might be. I don't know. So it's just, we have to make sure that we keep the mindset of Christ, which is always going to be with hope. And it's always going to be with the ability to do it with him, and that he'll bless it, of course, accordingly, as long as it's within his will.
You talked about, this political, climate we're living in. And, Abby and I face this on a daily basis of being censored. And, our parenting platform here, Satan works triple time to censor us because we share the things that most other platforms won't tackle. And she and I are known for sharing the brutal truth, whether that offends someone or hurts their feelings. And what we always say, I tell everybody, I'd rather you offend me into heaven than love me into hell, and love and compliment me in hell. No, thank you. Hurt my feelings, offend me to push me to the right way. And so how do you deal with that personally, on your mission and what you've been called to do? And also as a mother, we're seeing Satan working at his hardest right now. And because of everything that's being normalized and pushed, that, we are in a time right now, evil is looked at as good and good is looked at as evil. When Abby and I speak truth, biblical truth, we're called unchristian-like. You're not loving. You're racist. How can you two be loving mothers when we're just speaking truth? So how do you deal with that?
I don't know. I think probably I think, I don't know, maybe it's a wrong assumption, but I would assume that both of you probably have this ability as well. But there's I think a grace God gives me where I just don't care, you know, um, to a level, you know, where I I've experienced Christ's mercy so deeply in love, and I know it's true. And so there's a part that you just continue to walk in that, and you stop listening to all, like, everybody on the sidelines who are just screaming at you in that process. And maybe that's just because of practice. Maybe I've just had, you know, like you guys, a lot of years of just attempted to be beat down, or definitely have at times. Um, I also am very, very careful about the voices I allow in my home and in my head and on my phone. I'm very, very fiercely protective over what type of influence and what voices and what messaging is in this house, is, like I said, on any type of, you know, media that my kids would be exposed to. I'm very, very particular. Now, my kids are really small, so I have a lot more control over that right now. And while I do have control over that, I absolutely will exert that, because I'm forming them. And I'm supposed to be forming them for heaven and forming them into saints. And so I need to protect their minds and their hearts, who they're exposed to, what messages they're exposed to, what they see. And so I'm fiercely protective over that. And for me as a mom and how I influence them, I have to be careful that I'm not influenced poorly. So as much as I can, I mean, obviously, you know, including the sacraments and visiting them very frequently, and having a spiritual director and having other people that I bounce things off of what's going on in my life, so I can check myself, because I have to have accountability. I can't do this alone. I also am very careful about my social media. I've talked about this many times with people about my own social media. I would follow lots of people, and then I would mute basically every single person on my social media, just so that the only thing I would like not mute would be like office bloopers or something like that funny that I could laugh at. And now I've just gone like full, I don't know what it is, full black pill. I don't know what pill you're taking, but I went recently, and for me personally, I've just unfollowed everybody, and I only follow my husband on social media. I'm not saying that that's for everybody. I'm just saying for me, it protects my mind and my space. And so if I want to spend the time looking at other things, then I'm going to actually go search them out. So I do spend some time searching out the news that I want to look at, and all that. But I want to be very careful. Bottom line, I want to be very careful about the voices that I allow inside my head. I can be influenced like anybody else. So, and I have been, and I know my weak points. I know my weaknesses. They're in my face every day. And so I have to be careful about who I allow to talk to me. And even if they're not doing anything wrong, is there something in me, because there's a weakness in me, that I'll look at a good person who's doing good things in the world, and I'm going to be envious, and, you know, comparison gets in there. And if that's not helpful or healthy for me, then I have to cut that off. And we have to be very careful about the voices that we allow in our head. There's a lot of noise out there, and there's a lot of noise even from supposedly trusted sources, and even inside the church, that are absolutely wrong and guided by evil. And you have to be careful about that. You can't blindly follow everything out there, every voice out there.
I mean, there's evil infiltration everywhere.
Yeah.
Everywhere. And I'll tell you what you just said, I just did that 2 weeks ago. I unfollowed everyone with The Real Deal of Parenting on socials. And it is the most refreshing game changer. So when I'm doing our work, and when I need to go look up something that I truly like, that I know intentionally, I'm consciously going to look this up, because I want to see what I'm missing. I want to see what's going on. I was looking up Turning Point, looking at Abby, and it's so refreshing, because again, I even know, like, when I'm riding my Peloton, I like to listen to like music and pump up music. And this is just like a small example of, there's certain songs that can lead me to sin, like venial sins in my head. And like and those little thoughts turn into innocent, not so innocent actions or words. Do you know what I mean? Like, you give Satan just the tiniest foothold in the door, he will knock it down. And so I am the same way. I catch the littlest things where is this song taking my thoughts to inappropriate thoughts that are just going to start spiraling. And so it is. And I think we three, because we've been there, we've been living in deep sin before, we've, got Christ's mercy that we just chase down every day and never want to lose it again. And so we are extra cautious of knowing where our weaknesses are, where we never want to be, and why we're so outspoken on the things we are,
Yeah.
And so tell all of us what you've created and what people, because you have this beautiful story, and I know you're a writer and a speaker, but what have you created that people can go to on social media to get more of this?
Yeah, there's a couple different things that we've got going on. So I created a free Catholic app. It's for Christian women. And it's called Lux Catholic, and it's just very simple. Our goal is just to pray together and to pray for one another. So we say the rosary twice a day live. Say Divine Mercy Chapel on Fridays. There's other resources in there too for prayers and for connection, and you can find ladies in your same state, or if you want to find a group for homeschooling moms or whatever it might be. That's all in there. So it's a great place just to know that you're not alone. If you want to get on something that's kind of off of traditional social media, but click on an app where you're just going to begin there to pray, that's what we have available, and that's free. So you can come on into Lux Catholic and get in there, and you can pray with us and put your prayer intentions in there. They're really, really beautiful. We have women obviously from all over the world. We have over 10,000 women inside the app, and they're just in there praying every day together. And then we have Lux University. So Lux is Latin for light. And so we are guided by Gospel of John. In particular, John starts out with talking about John 1 with the light of Christ, but also in particular, our patron saint is Saint Photina, which is in John 4, and that's the woman at the well. And so that's where all of that is kind of behind, just to give you a background of why we use Lux so much, is because the woman at the well went into the town after she had been forgiven by Christ because of all of her past sins, and she brought people to Christ. So we want to be that same light of going back into our own worlds and bringing people to meet Christ. And so with that, we have Lux University, and Lux University is a platform where we host and have different courses. They're like mini little courses on the faith that are taught in very bite-sized pieces of theology. Some great courses in there, and that you can just take on your own. They're digital courses there. And then we have some new programs that are starting up next year. Some really big announcements coming up next year, early next year, that I can't wait to share some things that are going to happen. Some really big stuff is going to happen next year that I think is going to just blow so much out of the water. I hate when people do this. We're like, oh, I can't do anything yet. That stinks. I just don't like it, but I just did it, so I have to eat my words now. But I can't unfortunately say anything yet. But yeah, just wait till next year. We got some really great programs for women coming up. Really, really excited.
Amazing. And I think, and I love it, that as much darkness as we're seeing, and as much evil is being exposed, and God willing, more evil will be exposed. And it seems like God is just convicting, women like us three and so many others. You know what? That darkness is becoming darker, but I'm going to have you shine brighter, and I'm going to have you speak more loudly, and I'm going to have you be even more bold in my name. And so I love it. I love that he continues to move all of us and pull us in deeper, all in his name, and to do his work. And so I'm so grateful for people who are so vulnerable and brutally honest as yourself, Leah, who are just now beautiful, shining lights, walking testimonies of God's goodness and his mercy, and how much more you were made for. You're this exquisitely beautiful woman, and he's just doing so much more with you than what you were doing in New York City. So your story is beautiful. Thank you for sharing it with us. And everybody, if you are not already following Leah, follow her on Facebook, follow her on Instagram, check out her website. We can link it here in the comments below. But you have such a beautiful story. And again, I was so glad that this got booked right before Christmas, because I feel like there's so many men and women who are on this journey right now where they can no longer be on the fence and they have to choose their side, which way they're going to go. And I pray that if they don't have that physical person like your father greeting you at the door to lead you home to Christ, I pray that they have our Blessed Mother or our Heavenly Father, that they can lean into one of those arms and start on their new journey, because you have just such a beautiful example. So we can't thank you enough.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. And Leah and I have talked about doing a really fun product review show. So it's going to happen. We're going to do it.
I thought about that earlier today as I was getting ready, and I'm like, why don't we do anything yet?
I know. Why haven't we done that yet?
This is
like
silly.
where you get like the fiber eyebrows or something, or those like fun things that you see in the store that you're like, who would use that? Okay, well, we're going to get it and start trying it out.
I think we just should. I just think there needs to be some type of practical but light and uplifting ridiculous videos out there that we can do quite well. I think we can.
Oh, like Leah and Abby product reviews. I think it's just so fun.
I love it. Let's run it. Let's do it.
I also, Abby, I have to tell you before we head out, I have a joke for you.
Oh, good. Okay, good. I'm ready.
Okay. All right. So I'm assuming that your audience knows that you love.
I love jokes. I love cheesy jokes. I do. I love them.
Cheesy jokes. And
so you have one for me. Okay, good.
About you. I don't, but I found one that I think is going to be good. Okay. I asked my kids too.
Okay.
Okay. So, oh gosh. Okay. So, I'm terrible about this. Okay. So, okay. How did the hammerhead do on his final exam? He nailed it.
He nailed it. Ah, that's a good one.
But I love that you laugh at it. It just makes me think about you. I just am like, this is stupid, man. But I was like, I know. I think Abby's gonna like this. I came to dinner a couple weeks ago, and I'm like, I gotta remember this for Abby. And there you go.
I love it. I do. I love. Reagan may not even know that about me, but I love a cheesy joke. I love it.
Well,
I love Abby's laugh. I think, you know how on TikTok or they make the sounds from like clips of like shows or movies or even voices, like literally Abby's laugh, or when we video each other, I can just replay it and it puts me in a good mood. Like Abby has this like laugh that needs to be a sound bite or something. I love it.
I think that's easily done. I think there could be something that we could start a reel on Abby's laugh, and then we can just put it to crazy kid moments. And just
I have a joke for you.
Okay, let's go.
All right. Why did the Clydesdale give the pony a glass of water?
I don't know. Why?
Because he was a little horse.
I had to pause for 2 seconds.
Barely say it. You can barely give the punchline. Look at you.
It's everyone watching is probably like,
oh my God, so funny.
I love that you are laughing at it. I think that's why I enjoy this, because they don't hit me like they hit you, but you laughing at it. I love to laugh when other people are laughing.
Gosh.
I'm here for it.
oh my God.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well,
So we might need to have your own little comedy corner too. We'll have you guys unboxing things and doing product reviews, and then a little
jokes in between.
Satire.
Oh my gosh. Anyway.
Love it.
Yeah.
This was fun, guys.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming on, Leah. I know everybody we had a lot of comments, so everybody loved your story.
Good. And we'd love to have you back on. You'll have to come back after the new year and you get some things underway and your announcements and secrets are out.
Give us like 101 about chicken slaughtering, and
I can tell you so many things about the inside of a chicken now. Oh my gosh. The things that are in there. The things that are in there.
I'm here for it. I love it.
Yeah, we should. That's a different conversation. We should give a trigger warning to people who can't handle food and where it's from. But
hey, I'm like, if you aren't willing to hear about that, then don't eat it. Right. We're hunters, so I'm like,
well, I'm really
deer and stuff like that. Like,
I'm like totally fascinated. I feel like, I don't know, Abby, I feel like we need to like give her own episode here of like farm life, because so many people now are like me. I'm always like, I want to go off the grid. I want to get a farm. I don't even know how to take care of like a horse or a cow, but like all these things. And I'm serious. I feel like so many people want to start growing their own gardens, and I can't even keep a plant alive. So the fact you and your husband are like unearthing these things and YouTubing and just doing it, it's like, this is necessary information for people today.
Humans can do this. Like, we act like this wasn't done, like it's a new thing. Like, we've been doing this since the beginning. Okay.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. Since the very beginning. So of course we've been definitely removed for it for the past maybe 75 years. Easy. We've been quite removed, but it's not unknowable. You can do it. It requires you to step out of your comfort zone to learn how to do some stuff, and but yeah, I'd be happy to.
We've been like wussified. That's what's happened.
We have. It's just, and then people are like, "Ew, gross," and I'm like, what do you eat?
I'm like, you eat it. So
yeah. And also, do you know what you eat? Like, I know what my kids ate. I fed them myself. I took care of them myself. I killed them myself. I took their feathers off myself. I also gutted them myself. I know what was not left in there. I bagged them and took care of them myself. I froze them myself. I know how long they've been in that freezer. So when I eat my chicken, I know everything about it.
That's right. I know they did. I know they weren't pumped full of like hormones and gross antibiotics
or how they're treated,
Exactly. Yeah.
Or even how they're butchered too, and how clean it is and everything that goes in that. Like, you start, like, when I started doing that, I was like, oh my gosh, I can see why people do this, because you have more control over what goes in your body. And we know that food is so toxic. It's making us so sick.
Yeah.
And so when you're able to have more control over your food, like we get our, we have egg laying chickens, or we get our eggs. We have our meat birds, or those are the ones that we butcher. We've got pigs out there right now that are just getting pumped up with great, yummy food. And when you start to finish, you know where your food's coming from. One, you have a deeper appreciation of the land and what God has given us to use at this time. And then you can really begin to become really particular about what you're feeding your family. You can taste the difference, and
it'll make your family healthier too.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. As I'm just thinking, like, am I going to take the kids to Chick-fil-A for lunch? I really want their fries right now.
Go out there and slaughter a chicken, Reagan.
Oh my gosh. Oh Lord. Well, I love it. This was so much fun. And Leah, you have to come back on. You just have to.
Of course. Absolutely. Anytime. Thank you so much for letting me just share my heart and my story. Thank you everybody who are listening live to that. I pray that the Holy Spirit truly was moving your heart in some way. To not because of my story, but to move your heart so you can become closer to Christ, because ultimately that's what he's wanting to do. And especially during this time as we approach Christmas and this Advent season, we're all in a sense journeying towards the manger. Like, we are all on our way to meet Christ who's already there. And so we have that journey to make, and Christ is with us. So, I just want to encourage people to continue to seek out Christ. This is a great week to come back to him, to receive mercy and forgiveness, and to come back to him.
Yes, to come home.
Amen.
I love that.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody for watching, and we will see you
Merry
soon. And
Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Yeah.
Yes.
Awesome. Bye, guys.
Okay, bye, guys.